Hey guys, welcome to your first biology tutorial. Today we'll be discussing biochemistry. Biology and chemistry have an overlap that is essential to understanding both subjects. And biochemistry is also apparent on both the SAT-2 and the AP exams. First, let's discuss the structure of an atom. The atom has three main integral parts to it. First, you have protons, which are positively charged. Next, you have neutrons, which have no charge or neutral charge. Next, you have electrons, which have a negative charge. There are three main points that you need to know about these three objects that are important for scoring well in the SAT-2 and the AP exams. First, atoms with the same number of protons and electrons are in their elemental state. So let me abbreviate here. They're in their elemental state. Next, we have that the way electrons are configured or placed in the atom determines the way it will react within chemical reactions. So, electron configuration determines reactivity. And thirdly, we have that electrons in their lowest energy level are said to be in ground state. So electrons, when they're in a low energy level, we call that ground state. And as we'll see in like photosynthesis and such, when photons come in through the form of light, a lot of times electrons are excited and move up to higher energy levels. So when electrons absorb energy, they move up to higher energy levels. So those are three main things you should know about the structure of an atom. There's one other thing that is important to understand, and that's isotopes. Isotopes are just as when atoms of one element differ in the number of neutrons. So for example, let's take carbon as an example. It has 12 neutrons normally. You also have forms of carbon called carbon-13 and carbon-14. Some isotopes are radioactive. For example, carbon-14 is radioactive and plays an important part in discoveries, for example, radioactive labeling, as we'll see later. Next, I want to talk about bonding. A bond is formed when two atomic nuclei attract the same electrons. When a bond is formed, energy is released. And that's a really important concept, so let me write that down. So you should definitely know that. There are two main types of bonds that you should know: ionic versus covalent. And the basic difference between these two types of bonds is that ionic bonds involves a transfer of electrons, while covalent bonds involves a sharing of electrons. And along with that, there's two types of covalent bonds that you should know. One of them is nonpolar, and the other is polar. The basic difference between polar and nonpolar covalent bonds are that electrons are shared equally between two atoms that are alike in nonpolar bonds. So for example, H and H, two alike atoms, and electrons are shared equally. And as for polar, they're two unlike atoms. So let's see H2O, for example. H2O. And electrons are shared unequally there. In fact, as we'll see, electrons tend to go more towards the oxygen side because of the electronegativity difference. But we'll talk about that in the next video of characteristics of water.